Welcome, everyone. My name is Rick Jord, and I serve Calvin University as the Director of Alumni and Community Relations. And we're excited to have you back here for another Facebook Live interview. Today, we're excited to be interviewing Jared Rispens, who is a 2009 grad and is currently serving as an active duty physician and flight surgeon for the United States Coast Guard at the United States Coast Guard Aviation Training Center in Mobile, Alabama. Jared served previously at the Center for Disease Control and worked extensively on the COVID-19 pandemic. But before we start that conversation, I also want to remind all of our alumni that we started Unlearn Week this week on Calvin's campus. And because so many of the events are virtual this year, you're all invited to attend. So we're going to be posting some of the links for that in the comments below. So make sure to check that out. If you're unfamiliar with Unlearn Week, it's our kickoff event for the year-round program series focused on providing a safe campus-wide forum for conversations designed to unlearn stereotypes, biases, and racism. So as I mentioned, we'll put a link in the comments so you can see the full list of events that are happening and some of the events that have already taken place and have been recorded, and so you can check those out as well. Tonight, there's going to be a virtual screening of the film Gather, followed by a panel discussion featuring some Calvin faculty and staff. So I'd encourage you to check that out as well. The event is free, but you need to pre-register. You can find the link for that also in the comments below. And then one final announcement before we get to our interview for the week. Next week, we're going to be hosting a town hall with President Leroy. So you can join us on October 13 at 8 p.m. Eastern, right back here on Facebook Live and on YouTube. And we'll be sharing updates about the university and taking questions from alumni. So if you've got a question on your mind right now and want to put that in the comments, feel free. But for now, I am very excited to introduce today's guest. Like I mentioned, Jared Rispens is a 2009 alum. He got a BA in Spanish and served as a student body president while at Calvin. He went on to earn his medical degree from Michigan State University College of Human Medicine, go Spartans. And following his residency, he worked at the CDC before taking his current role with the Coast Guard. Jared, it is great to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your work to join us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rick. I'm really happy to be here and surprised you even asked me to join you. It's really an honor to be with you.
Well, I've heard great things about you from Laura Champion and some others here on campus. And so given the work that you've done with COVID and things like that, we just thought it would be a great topic for some of the alumni for you to hear some of the work that you did to help Calvin prepare, but also a little bit about your job and what you're doing now. So let's just start there. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what your job entails and what you are doing now?
Sure. So it can get a bit confusing, but I am a active duty member of the Commissioned Corps in the United States Public Health Service. So a lot of people forget that there's two other uniformed services outside of the military, out of the 5 main branches, and that's the Commissioned Corps of the Public Health Service and NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. So I'm part of the Public Health Service, and as part of the Public Health Service, we also serve in other agencies within the government. So currently I'm with Department of Homeland Security and with the Coast Guard here in Mobile, Alabama. With the Coast Guard here, I'm at the, as you mentioned, the Aviation Training Center, which is the Coast Guard's main base for training their aviators. And here I serve as one of the flight surgeons. And a lot of people ask me all the time, what's a flight surgeon? Wow, you operate on a plane. No, I do not. Not operating in a plane, but I get that a lot. It's a big misconception. And basically, the name sort of leads to that misconception. It's a name that was, I believe, began in the early 1900s in the Army when they needed specific doctors for aviators. So I like to tell people I'm basically an internal medicine doctor for a very specific population in the military. And that specific population are pilots air crew, and in the Coast Guard, air crew includes aviation mechanics, aviation electronic techs, and then, of course, rescue swimmers. But it also includes air traffic controllers as well as drone operators. So a lot of different people that we take care of as flight surgeons. And as a flight surgeon, your main job is to serve as sort of the expert in medical standards. So aviators are held to the highest standard. Their bodies are under different stresses than we have just walking around on ground. The challenges that they face, the physiologic challenges, are a lot different, and so you need a doctor to understand those things and sort of make sure that each aviator is up to their highest potential and meet the standards. So apart from serving as aviators' primary physician, I also get to fly each week. And it's actually part of basically a job requirement for me. I need to be flying each week. And that's because the military over the years has seen the value in the doctor understanding the rigors of flight and sort of really establishing rapport with aviators in the sky. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Apart from that, I serve as a medical expert for medevacs. So if a cruise ship would call the Coast Guard, say someone was having a heart attack or a stroke or something another health emergency, they call the Coast Guard and sometimes request a medevac. And that's when the Coast Guard doctor, the flight surgeon, will coordinate with the cruise ship and our aviators and see if we're able to offer assistance in a safe way.
Oh, that's great. So is there additional training that you had to go through as it pertains to pilots in particular and some of the additional stresses that their bodies undergo?
Yeah. So I did attend 2-month training at a Navy flight surgeon course. And this was mostly a classroom course, but basically covering flight physiology, aerospace medicine, and really understanding those medical standards that the aviators are held to. And then on top of that, I just finished some flight training here specifically with the Coast Guard just to become more familiar with Coast Guard aircraft. So on my base, we have 2 types of helicopters. We have the H-65 and the H-60, and we also have a fixed wing aircraft, the C-144. So it's a great time and it's fun.
That's good. I was just looking at some of the comments, and Jeff Scott mentioned, he's like, hey, I know that guy. So I'm assuming you know Jeff Scott.
I do know Jeff. We went to medical school together.
Oh, okay.
As well, and at Calvin. So.
Well, great. Well, I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about Calvin and what your experience was like while you were at Calvin, and how do you think it contributed to what you're doing now, or even prepared you for that? And I also know we mentioned you were student body president while you were at Calvin, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that experience too.
Sure. So where to begin? Calvin was just probably the 4 best years of my life so far. Just so many things were jam-packed into those 4 years. As you mentioned, I was student body president my senior year, but even before that, I had the opportunity to do the semester abroad in Honduras for Spanish. Also studied abroad during 3 different interims. So I studied in China doing traditional Chinese medicine with Dr. Anding Chen. Went to Spain for an interim, and then also went to the jungles of Ecuador with Dr. Tigalar for an interim and did sort of jungle medicine and medical missions. So those trips for me really stand out in my mind the most, really defining my Calvin experience. Think about those experiences often and all the people that I spent those times with, and really preparing me for my career and giving me a really broad, diverse worldview, which has really led to my successes so far. Apart from studying abroad, I was a Spanish major, so a little bit non-traditional for a pre-med student. But it was I sort of went into Calvin knowing I wanted to become fluent in a second language, and that was Spanish for me. So it was really awesome to be able to be pre-med, but then also study a totally different subject. So yeah, so much I could talk about those 4 years.
Yeah. What did you learn while being student body president? Did you
Yeah.
take any lessons from that?
So, first of all, leadership, learning leadership skills. I'd been a student senator prior to becoming student body president. So that journey in leadership and getting to know the leaders around the college was really important for me. So having monthly breakfast meetings with President Biker at the time, and really getting to know the Vice President, Shirley Hoekstra, as well. Both really served as wonderful mentors to me and really showed me pictures of leadership and profiles in leadership. So I really appreciated that part. But then what I loved the most was just really getting to know all the senators in the Student Senate and learning to lead a big team, learning to lead small teams with my VP, my two VPs. So just can't say enough about that privilege it was to be student body president. I still look back and I'm like, wow, it was such a gift and a blessing to me, and really grew me as a person and as a leader, and prepared me for the spots I'm in now. So.
That's great. And we also got another comment here that Esther Klompmaker said she's proud to hear all that you've accomplished, Jared. So hello from Esther.
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, Esther and I went to high school together and then Calvin together. So
nice.
Yeah.
A little trip down memory lane for you.
Yeah.
So after med school, you went to work for the CDC, or after you had your residency at Rush, and then you went to the CDC. What was your experience like there, and how did you end up at the CDC?
Yeah. That's a great question. So I guess during residency, I found that there were no specialties as I rotated through the specialties that really, spoke to me, except infectious diseases. It just really fascinated me, all the different types of bugs and pathogens that can cause so much illness. And so I knew I was drawn to that, but I wasn't sure I wanted to be an infectious disease specialist or clinician. And public health and learning more about public health looked good to me. And so I heard from a number of fellow physicians at the hospital who were former CDC officers about this program called the Epidemic Intelligence Service at the CDC. Very competitive program. And they encouraged me to apply for it. So I thought, can't really lose. So I'm going to apply. And I applied and got in, which I was super surprised by. Yeah, it was great. It's a very competitive postdoc program at the CDC. It's they basically call us the CDC's disease detectives. We're the frontline public health officers, usually in an outbreak that CDC sends out. And through that experience, there's also mentorship and other learning in applied epidemiology. So it was a great opportunity for me. So once I was accepted, then you go through a separate process to figure out what division of the CDC you're going to work with. And that's called the match process. And you interview with all the ones that are interesting to you, and then you have to make a rank list and submit that into this algorithm, and then the computer tells everyone where to go. And so I interviewed with a number of different things. Everything looked interesting to me. And that was one time I called up Dr. Champion and said, hey, this is my list. what do you think? What do you think I should do? And at that time, there was, a global epidemic spot that looked great to me, with, international travel and work, all over the country and in the world and in Africa mainly. And then there was this new position that no other officer had been in before, and it was with the vessel sanitation program. And this is a program at CDC that deals with cruise ship outbreaks and namely gastrointestinal disease outbreaks like norovirus. And it was sort of a risk for me because no one had any experience with that team or with that program. But it really excited me because there'd be a lot of travel. I'd get to meet these cruise ships, wherever they may be. And so I thought, let's go for that. And I actually ended up matching with them. And it was really neat because my one supervisor is actually a Cornerstone grad. So we had that Michigan connection. But with that team, I was able to conduct multiple outbreak investigations on probably over a dozen cruise ships across the United States. Again, mostly with norovirus, but the last one I had was basically a year ago, this October, in New York City. One cruise line, it was really interesting because one cruise line had been having outbreaks across their entire fleet. So it wasn't just one ship, it was their entire fleet over several months during the summer. They couldn't figure it out. And so they called up the CDC. They were coming into New York City. And we assembled a team to meet the ship. And early on, I was reviewing the data that they had sent us. And to me, it looked foodborne, just looking over their menus and sort of the timelines when people got sick after certain foods were served. And so I thought, we're not going to solve this outbreak if we don't have our FDA counterparts along with us. So made an emergency call to FDA. I think it was on a Thursday night, just a Hail Mary just to see if they could help us. And they scrambled a team and met us on the ship the very next day to collect food samples. So we ended up collecting a bunch of food samples and narrowed it down to a few and found that the outbreak was caused by frozen berries.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So you are a disease detective. So.
What's that?
So you are a disease detective.
Yeah. It was, really neat, really amazing team to work with because you're working with the public health specialists from the cruise line. You're working with the New York City Health Department, the FDA, and then my team from the CDC. So just a great team collaborative effort and solved it. And I wrote up the investigation. It's published now in MMWR. So if people are interested in reading about that, they can search for that.
Great. Thank you. And Esther also wanted me to remind you that you also went to elementary school together. So.
Oh, we did. Yep.
Yeah. And someone named Sue Rispens says, hello from Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Greetings from your mother who's watching. So, you'd mentioned Dr. Laura Champion just a moment ago and having some conversations with her. And I know that in dealing with COVID, you've had regular conversations with her too. So for those who don't know, Dr. Champion is head of our health services here at Calvin and is the one who's helped prepare the students, the faculty, and the staff for a safe return for us to all live on together and work together on campus right now. And we're so happy that we don't have any active cases on campus right now. And thanks to a lot of her leadership, and I know some conversations that she's had with you. She thinks very highly of you, and I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how the two of you know each other.
Sure. So I didn't know Dr. Champion when I was at Calvin. But after Calvin, I went to Michigan State for medical school right in Grand Rapids, and she was actually one of my instructors. And as I got to know her, I also was the Christian Medical and Dental Association chair while I was in med school there at MSU, and she became sort of the group mentor as well and led a lot of our sessions. So that's sort of what kicked off our relationship and friendship. And then when I went to the CDC, you know, once COVID hit, I was in Africa at that time. I was in Ethiopia working on polio eradication and pushing out a vaccine there. And my deployment ended in late February, so I got called back. And at that point, the entire CDC was focused on COVID. So, you know, all my other duties changed. And I think it was 2 weeks later, I had deployed to New Orleans for a huge outbreak at a nursing home, the first main outbreak in the state of Louisiana. So we visited this nursing home to help and mitigate the outbreak. But once I returned, Dr. Champion and I were in regular contact. I sort of laugh because, you know, after a long day working on COVID, you know, I would grab a glass of wine, call Dr. Champion and discuss all the literature that just came out and all the new guidelines that were coming out with her. And she would fill me in on what was happening at Calvin and the new measures that she was thinking about. And it was just great to be able to bounce things off with her and hear all the hard work that Calvin was doing to keep, you know, students and staff safe. So, you know, it was just really great to hear. And I spoke with her recently too, and it sounds like you said, no active cases. I think there's one off campus you mentioned. But just, I've been so impressed hearing about how Calvin has been sort of an example, not only in Michigan, but across the country of a college just doing it right. With that, I heard you guys have an app that students use, Campus Clear, I think it's called, which is really interesting in how you guys use the functionality in that. Having your dedicated contact tracers that were trained by the health department, really students being super engaged and wanting to make this work, to stay in the classroom, and really being great about social distancing and mask use. Just, it made sense to me because I'm like, yeah, this is Calvin. These are my people. But just been so impressed and happy that I could, you know, shed a little bit of light onto some of the early discussions when there wasn't much information about COVID. But then also gaining sort of Dr. Champion's perspective as well, which has really helped me even now at the Coast Guard in sort of an operational role here.
Yeah, that's great. And so I also got someone who said hello from Dad and the Rispens seeds. So just wanted to pass that on to you as well. And you just got a heart emoji from Dr. Champion as well. So
okay.
Thanks for all that you did to help Calvin prepare well for our return as well. So, you know, Calvin's mission is to equip students to think deeply, to act justly, and to live wholeheartedly as Christ's agents of renewal in the world. And I just wondered how you feel like Calvin prepared you to live out that mission in your day-to-day life.
Yeah, I think I briefly mentioned it before when I was talking about my Calvin experience, but first, just the worldview that I gained during my time at Calvin, through all the traveling internationally, through all the incredible professors I had in each department, in the Spanish department, in the biology department, and professors who took, you know, extra time to mentor, like Dr. Peter Tigelar, who comes to mind first, who just really has a heart for students and pours his whole heart and soul into mentoring students and making sure they're successful. So, yeah, just that worldview and all the gifts that sort of Calvin has given me and that experience has given me really pushes me and equips me to do my job back when I was at the CDC and now with the Coast Guard. You know, since I'm a physician, a primary physician for so many active duty members here on base, you know, I really have the privilege of walking alongside people through health challenges and just in their normal lives. And I think that's sort of my main role as an agent of renewal, to sort of shed some of that worldview and really show the compassion that Christ has given me for these people, and just to really share life with people in that way. I think also I think taking that extra time, so taking the example of Dr. Tigelaar, and when I show patients that, yeah, I can take a few extra minutes and show that I actually care, that makes a huge difference too. So.
Yeah, it's great to have examples like that you can learn from in your life. So.
Right.
So just switching the topic a little bit now, let's say you have an hour to spend in a bookstore. What section would you make a beeline to go to? Or if you've got some time to watch something on Netflix, what are you going to look for?
All right. So in a bookstore, definitely straight to the mystery section. Love mysteries, crime thrillers, murder mysteries, things like that. So that's where I'd go to first. For Netflix shows, sort of along the same lines, I'm a big fan of British crime dramas. So I'm watching currently Hinterlands, shows like that, Broadchurch. Love a good detective story, and probably why I wanted to be an EIS officer, sort of that detective side of me.
Yeah, that's great. I remember watching Broadchurch too and really loved it. And now it's good to see Olivia Colman on The Crown as well. So
yeah.
So if you're not working, what are you doing in your spare time?
Yeah, so when I moved from Atlanta to Mobile, Alabama, at first I was a little hesitant and nervous because I thought, going from a big city to a really small city, I didn't know what I was going to do with my time. I love being on the water. I love fishing. So I ended up buying a small fishing boat, and that's what I like to do on the weekends, take the boat out. I live, right near the water. So fishing and water skiing, just spending some good time on the water. So.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned a little bit about some of your Calvin professors. I just want to let you know that Professor Slachter, Cynthia Slachter, said that she was very proud to have you as a student. So she's watching right now too.
Thank you. Yeah, I went to Spain with Dr. Slachter. So yeah.
Okay. Did you walk the Camino with her, or was it a semester program? Or
it was the interim that we spent mostly in Granada and then toured around the country as well.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our off-campus programs are a little limited right now.
Yeah, I bet.
So, are you? Have you heard anything more that you can share with us about a vaccine or anything like that we might not know yet? Or
I don't have any, internal information that I'm privy to about that, but I know Operation Warp Speed is moving ahead as quickly as possible, and yeah, we're shooting for a vaccine by the end of the year. So we'll see.
Yeah, let's just all hope and pray that is the case. So,
right. Yeah.
Jared, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today and taking a break from your work to talk with us about your Calvin experience and about what you're doing now. It's great to see alums like you out there living the mission of Calvin University. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Oh, so glad that you took the time. So. And thanks again to everyone else for being here today. Like I said, we will be back here next week. We'll have some events coming up online with Unlearn Week, so make sure you check our Facebook page for that. And then next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, will be the town hall with President Leroy. So tune in there, and we'd love to have some of your questions sent in to us that we can ask President Leroy. So thanks again for joining us. We'll be back here again in 2 weeks with another